This is beyond absurd, its absurdity reaching its peak. In a bid to own an affordable and practical tractor, a roadside workshop in Pakistan decided to make one from scratch. These channel steels, purchased at a rate of 500 grams per pound, are being used as the material for the tractor chassis. The craftsmen first cut the steel to the required lengths according to precise measurements. They marked the steel plates accurately and then cut along these marks. With a steady hand, the craftsmen quickly made the necessary cuts. Next, they assembled and welded the pieces. The entire frame was constructed by cutting and welding piece by piece. Although the assembly process might appear straightforward, the craftsmen needed to ensure that every measurement was precise. Any error could cause stress on the chassis, leading to potential cracks or deformation. After 6 long 8-hour days, they finally welded a rough frame. However, this was just the appetizer. Next, a 60-year-old craftsman was about to demonstrate an even more remarkable skill. The engine they were using was quite unique and did not match the gearbox. Thus, the craftsman was making a custom component to be installed on the gearbox. This newly fabricated shaft was specifically designed for mounting a pulley. The shaft would connect to the flywheel, allowing the pulley to drive the gearbox and enable the tractor to function. Since gear shifting was required, a clutch disc was indispensable. What do you think of the craftsman's skills and resourcefulness? If you could rate their craftsmanship on a scale of 1 to 10, how many points would you give them? After the clutch disc was properly installed, it could be mounted onto the gearbox. This gearbox, sourced from a small car, was then installed on both sides of the tractor chassis. Once the drive shafts were installed, they could be attached back to the chassis. However, unlike a car where the drive shafts directly drive the wheels, these drive shafts would later drive the wheels via chains. Additionally, its design was similar to a forklift, relying not on the front wheels for turning. Since the goal was to make it as functional as a forklift, it needed to be even more realistic by incorporating lifting capabilities. At this point, another craftsman got busy again. He was using a car's brake disc to attach a gear, which would later be used to drive the wheels. Once the gear was successfully mounted onto the brake disc, it could be installed back onto the chassis. This installation process was meticulous and required continuous measurements to ensure the vehicle's speed and performance were accurate, avoiding issues like tire wear. The gear was simply fixed using welding. As night fell, the craftsmen continued working diligently, welding mudguards, installing pulleys, hubs, and tires. The installation of the front tires was relatively straightforward. However, the rear tires, which needed to rotate, were a bit more complicated. By the 4th day, the craftsmen started installing a shaft on the lifting bracket. This shaft was not intended to drive the lifting mechanism but to mount a pulley, which would be used later to drive the harvester. Next comes the installation of the engine. This engine is exceptionally straightforward, using a single-cylinder diesel engine similar to those commonly used in water pumps. There isn't much difference in principle. The connection between the engine and the gearbox relies on 2 belts for driving. Of course, to make its operation smoother, a hydraulic pump is essential. Therefore, they also need to install a hydraulic pump on it now. This hydraulic pump is directly driven by the engine. This means that even when the vehicle is in neutral gear, the hydraulic pump can still operate normally. Next, they proceeded to install the steering tie rods. Can you imagine? These tie rods are all modified by them personally. While it may seem simple, in reality, it's extremely complex. Even with aftermarket parts, it often takes half a day to install them properly. Yet, they managed to effortlessly create such a perfect steering system. Following this, they began installing hydraulic rods and hydraulic oil pipes on the lifter side. Of course, here they also need to install a multi-way valve to control the lifting and lowering. Once all preparations are completed, testing can commence. Now, lifting the empty vehicle is relatively smooth. Next, let's have two people step on to test it. It can also be easily accomplished. After a simple test to confirm everything is okay, the next step is to take it to the paint booth for painting. The craftsman will first apply a layer of pink primer paint overall. Then they will spray another layer of paint. After the spray painting is completed, the overall effect is just like this. It looks no different from those produced by large factories. Next, it needs to be driven for testing. Only after confirming no issues through inspection can it be truly considered completed. The craftsmen, with their wisdom and skill, have crafted an economically practical tractor, displaying extraordinary creativity and resilient spirit. Let's praise the master craftsmen for their superb skills.